Disney needs a do-over. Things have not been going well for the company, the stock sliding in a way that was predicted, but is still problematic, no doubt. The House of Mouse, the place of magic, seemingly out of spells, and crowds are not spellbound. Now, however, Deadpool and Wolverine, another chance for Bob Iger to take back the narrative. Today, we're telling you whether or not Deadpool and Wolverine can smash records and beat the Joker. Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Pro Channel, explaining entertainment, keeping you ahead of the culture curve. That is the game we play every day, and we intend to win. How do we win? Well, by having you be a friend of the channel. Thank you for being here, folks. You are the gigawatts. Make sure to click that like button, and let's get started. Today, we've got a great panel. We want to bring them on right now. There is a vertical here for Disney, and that is we've been talking about dismal stuff for Disney for the past 2 hours of the show. It's time for some good stuff for Disney. It will not lift their stock, just like Inside Out 2 will not lift their stock. No financial statements here. I'm just telling you that these are drops in the bucket from the box office in comparison to the systemic issues that Disney is currently having. We can talk about what's holding their stock down later on in the show. Happy to do so, and we will. But let's give them that silver lining they need, and that is that Deadpool and Wolverine is about to do phenomenally well at the box office. Here's the story. It's out of Slash Film. And it says, Deadpool and Wolverine won't just break box office records, it will shatter them. This is by Ryan Scott. Now, I don't know if Deadpool and Wolverine is going to be a fantastic superhero film. Grace Randolph says it's the best superhero film she's ever seen. What does that mean? I don't know. Others have said it's a fun film with great cameos. Others have said it's a messy script, but overall it's fine. So I don't know. What I do know is that up until I saw the most recent trailer, I had some qualms. The most recent trailer, though, indicated to me that it's not just going to be a hard R raunchy comedy, but there's going to be heart. Because the trailer depicted that this Wolverine character that we're going to get, that he is going to overcome adversity, which, by the way, is the anti-Last Jedi, right? Luke never overcomes whatever it is that destroyed him and turned him from being the archetypal character of hope to a hermit who does not want to leave his little rock in space to go help anyone. So he never wins that. They try to spin it as a win. It's not. This film appears to be the anti-Last Jedi. And I mean that. It appears to be taking a Wolverine that we've never been with, but who is similar and who is ultimately down on his luck. And he is going to ascend with Deadpool into something great, resembling the form that we know he can be. Now, what that means, folks, is that it's a story that is completely and utterly anti-woke. We'll explain in a moment. Let's read the article for now. The first half of 2024 was, to put it mildly, a rough ride at the box office. Ticket sales were lagging way behind 2023 levels. Oh, yeah, remember? Up until June, we were saying, guys, we may be looking at theaters going the way of Kmart and Sears. That's how bad it was. Now, luckily, thankfully, things got turned around because Inside Out 2 did not go straight on into crazy world with anxiety. They thread the needle well enough that they made a lot of money, and that helped save theaters. Good. And it goes on to talk about that. It says, however, sticking to Deadpool and Wolverine. Directed by Sean Levy with Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman returning as Wade Wilson and Logan, respectively, interest for this one is higher than any other superhero movie in quite some time. Based on early estimates, even more than last year's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Now, that made $850 million, essentially, after opening to a $118. That was a PG-13, and oh, by the way, it was held back by the cruelty to the little CGI critters. Without that, it would have done better. I'm not saying that artistically it shouldn't be there. I'm just saying that held it back to some degree. However, to that end, this being an R-rated movie, and a hard R-rated movie at that, Deadpool and Wolverine is currently expecting to pull in at least $160 million when it opens next weekend per early tracking via Variety. That number, however, looks to be on the conservative end. And this is the news that we're getting. Box Office Theory is saying this thing's going at 167 to 214. So if you want to land somewhere in the middle, $190 to 200 would be the best bet you could make on how much this is going to make in the first domestic weekend. So this film actually has a shot at making more than $200 million, and it's a hard R. That means it's going to break the record at the box office for an R-rated film. And what I'm going to suggest is that whatever the comedy might be, whatever the skill of the script might be, that there are folks who are not going to like that this film does what it does. And I'll explain why. Twisters just came out and they didn't like it. They didn't like that it did well because it doesn't have divisive climate issues in it, whether they're scientifically true or not the purview of this show today. But it left it out and it did well. And it had a man and a woman in love. Now, they might not have smoochified on the screen, but they fell in love with one another. And that was the prominent thing about the film. They didn't like it. And if we go back, Inside Out 2 and Despicable Me 4, really, they stayed away from being, what would you say, explicitly woke in any way. Now, here comes this movie. And this movie, and I listen, I love films of every variety with everybody in them, and I am all for everybody of every color. I love a kaleidoscope of humanity. But I'm just telling you, they are not going to like that Deadpool and Wolverine stars Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman, and that it's going to do well. That is counterproductive to their path forward on the DEI playbook. And if this shatters records, although those who invest and although those who trying to lead the company of Disney might be impressed by that box office return, there are going to be folks who are not going to be happy that this film succeeds for that reason. Panel, your thoughts.
So I just want to DEI is dying and about to be dead, and they don't know it.
Well, one would hope, because we believe that meritocracy is the best.
Look, when I first started working with you guys, I think the first article I wrote for you, John, was about the time lag of these things and the fact that it takes 2 and 3 and 4 years to create something. And when you think you're on the forefront of the new history and you are at the head of the revolution, what if it doesn't happen behind you? What if eventually people start dropping off? Eventually, the everyday people don't get convinced, they get fed up and start turning off the switch and turning off the money. And suddenly you're out there in that so-called riot in the street, and there's only you. That's what's happening to these people, socially, financially, politically, creatively. And they just don't know that they're dead men walking yet. So it will take a lot more than just this 1 or 2 or 3 movies to convince them. Or will they ever be convinced? But either way, sooner or later, you run out of people's money to put into stuff that doesn't sync with the audience. That's all.
So, yeah, I'm glad you brought this up, because this actually kind of shows us the numbers here. And if you compare that to the actual first Deadpool, the domestic box office was actually 363 million. So it's kind of pacing on the same path there. You can see the low end there is 352. The high end is 493. So if it does get that high end, that is really, really good. But even if you look at their 3-day target for the opening weekend, that's 165 million. The opening weekend for Deadpool in 2016 was 132 million. You adjust that for inflation, that's 173 million. So,
and not just inflation and ticket price, John, number of theaters too.
Right. So I'm just adjusting, just using straight up like the U.S. inflation calculator. I'm not looking at anything like that. But so even then, it's not as big as what they're saying. It looks like it's kind of on par to what we saw in the 2016 movie. Obviously, the 2018 movie, Deadpool 2, did a little bit worse. It did 324 million, 324.5 million domestically in 2018, and then it did 125.5 million opening. So it looks like it is going to perform better than Deadpool 2, at least based on what Box Office Theory is putting out here. But it looks like it's kind of on the same trajectory, around the same trajectory as the first Deadpool back in 2016. So I just want to kind of make everyone aware of that.
Yeah, that's important. And it's especially important if you look forward to, will there be another one?
Now, there is one thing sorry. I thought you were...
All I was going to say was, because if it takes you all these movies to get back to where you were at the beginning, then great, this is swell, this is marvelous, but I've seen that act you do now several times. Do I care to see it again? I don't know.
So
go ahead, Jonathan. I've got a comment on the box office.
No, this is something that always comes up in box office when we talk about it. First Deadpool movie was $75 million to make, reported budgets. They're never quite exactly what they say they are. Second Deadpool movie was $150 million to make. Both of those movies were pretty close in line with each other as far as final box office tally. A little bit more for Deadpool 2. Deadpool 2 was the most lucrative. Sorry, what's the best way to put this? Highest gross of any X-Men film ever here for Marvel or Fox at the time. This one, it would not be surprising if this one is at the $250 million to $300 million range because of Hugh Jackman, Ryan Reynolds, and of course the fact that this was shut down several times for mask issues and probably reshoots of another nature. So this one has a higher threshold for profitability as well. But maybe that's not what Disney's interested in with this one.
So let me explain why I think this will break the record for the highest grossing R-rated film, which is previously held by Joker. And Joker still holds it today. It's just barely at $1 billion. You could just basically say it's $1 billion. It's about as close on the money as you can get. And I could be wrong, folks. We'll come back and we'll find out. We're prognosticating here, and the market is hard to predict sometimes, especially given that there are sociopolitical things that could happen. There are political things that could happen that would influence the box office. And that's not the case every single time we talk about a movie. But this time, legitimately, there's so much zaniness in the real world that it could impact how the box office goes. Now, that said, here's my reasoning for why I think this will beat the Joker. If we go back and we look at Marvel films of the past, in terms of their percentage of box office take domestic versus international, the Marvels, 59% of that film came from international box office. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, 58% came from international box office. Ant-Man, 55%. We exclude Black Panther Wakanda Forever because of a hostility that exists for such a film in certain parts of the world. Thor Love and Thunder, 55% international. Doctor Strange, 57%. Spider-Man No Way Home, 58%. Essentially, what we see here is that, and by the way, the Spider-Man films tend to be more international than not. We'll see how that plays with Deadpool and Wolverine. But the international numbers have been something like 55 to 60% of the total box office, whereas the domestic has been somewhere in the 40 to 45% range. Now, if this film makes $400 million at the domestic, then one might anticipate that if that's 40%, that we're looking at $1 billion hit that could be had. The exception that I'll make on this is that Deadpool and Wolverine will probably not be operating with any support in China. At least I don't think it's going to have any support in China. Might not even get a release in China. I suspect it won't.
We'll get a release in China, but it will definitely be censored.
It will be censored. It will be altered. It will be changed. So that said, I don't know what the Chinese response will be, because you're essentially trying to predict what will happen with a film that will be nothing like what is seen in the rest of the world. So they're basically two different films. So I don't know how that's going to interplay. But if it operates, if it lands in the 400 mark, okay, and so the domestic total target is 405. If it lands at 405, and if it operates like any other of the most recent Marvel films as a percentage of domestic versus international, I think it's going to beat Joker just barely. Panel, any disagreements there?
I think like what you said already, it depends on word of mouth. You're already kind of mentioning a lot of the disparity in how people were reacting to the film. And so I think that's really going to factor in onto how many people watch this. I think we will see how this will be really front loaded like we typically see with the Marvel tentpole films. But what we'll really see is the second weekend, the third weekend, what is the fall off? Are people going to see it multiple times? Are people talking about it, telling their friends, you need to go see this? I think that's really going to be the determining factor with this film. And if it doesn't have that word of mouth, I think you can see it kind of fall off and you know, maybe not do as bad as Ant-Man Quantumania, where like completely fell off, or the Marvels, but you might see maybe a similar trajectory like what we see kind of maybe with Wakanda Forever and Thor Love and Thunder.
Film Threat had a great review on that, which is they're saying they had to go back to see it a second time because people were laughing and being loud, reacting to the scene so much they actually missed dialogue. So they said, we don't know if that's intentional or just by design, how it played out. This is, because of that, we have to go back and see it a second time just to make sure we catch everything. So
Well, and that brings up an interesting point, which is back in the days of the great, Marvel and Star Wars movies, they got huge returns. People going 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Now, of course, people say, okay, I've seen it. Now I'll watch it the second time when it's on streaming. But does that make anybody, in the case of Disney, where they say, no, it's only going to stream on our channel?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I think that is a diminishing return in the box office. I really do.
Yeah,
Well,
I have not been back to see a movie multiple times since Tropic Thunder.
Oh my gosh, what a great movie. Folks, we've come to the end yet again. Another video of excellence in the can. You can watch it again and again, but folks, we're happy you were here even for just this one time. If you would like to send us out across the airwaves of YouTube, then consider clicking the like button. Share, subscribe, click it, stick it to the algorithms. It is the notification bell. Drop a comment down below. Let us know your thoughts. Remember that a mind is a terrible thing to waste, so waste it not. And tell us your opinion. Are you going to go see Deadpool and Wolverine? Are you willing to forgive Marvel and Disney long enough to go see this thing? Do you think that this is a one-off, a standalone, or do you think that this is the beginning of something that's growing and growing? Will it be a launching pad for Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds across the MCU and the revitalization of what once was Mickey Mouse's golden goose, that being Marvel? We'd love to hear from you. Again, folks, we want to thank you for all of your support. And until we meet again, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.